Amazing. Well, welcome everybody to a conversation which is obviously near and dear to my heart and the two speakers, Lisa and Eveliene today. How is HR tech changing the world of work and driving culture and engagement in modern organisations? I feel like it's a pretty topical conversation at the moment. I think a lot of us have heard about all the changes that have manifested over the past 2 years, the rate of change accelerating, the world of work that we're living in, how it has changed, more remote teams, more remote onboarding, more challenges. So very interested to kind of unpack a little bit about what your two amazing companies are doing to overcome these challenges and adapt to the new way of work. I think what's really interesting is the word culture here is used a lot, and it's a fairly broad term. Not always well defined, and it means different things to different companies and different people. So to kick off, what I really wanted to understand was, what does culture actually mean to your organisations at Love Bonito? And what do you think the identity is of your organisation?
Okay, thank you for that introduction. That was great. And welcome to everyone here. Thanks for coming to listen to us on this key topic. Look, for us at Love Bonito, culture, it's a big word, isn't it? And, many people sort of push it around and think about it, and they have something nice on the wall that talks about their values or their mission and what their culture means. But for us at Love Bonito, it's a living part of our business. And to support that, we have 6 key values. So we've really looked at how we can incorporate that across the business to make sure it is that living and breathing part. Otherwise, culture becomes the plaque on the wall. And then everyone says, oh, that's what we do, but when you actually get into the workplace, it's a different feel. And that's the funny thing with culture. It's not something we can just put on a wall. We can have principles that will guide us and support us, that will hold us true to our values and keep our moral compass on track. But the actual culture when you walk into a business, it's what you feel, it's what you see. It's those unsaid things about how people interact with each other, how they support the customers, how they support the business, and what their beliefs are. So for us, we really try and capture that by recognising everyone, by supporting them and encouraging from that very first value, people matters, right through to everyone has their own personal beliefs and you can be your authentic self at work. And for us, that helps build our culture. It's one of openness, and we are typically a tech business, even though we're fashion. So we have had to do a lot to open that up. And allowing people to bring their authentic self to work and encouraging that really helps drive our culture.
Yeah, amazing. This topic of bringing your authentic self to work is, I was having a conversation with an HR leader only a few weeks ago, and the idea of that only a generation ago, it just wouldn't have been a concept that was understood, the authentic self at work. There was the parallel between professional and then private, and there was a big wall between the two of them. And I think with the emergence of remote work and how the world has changed now, that divider between the two worlds has gone. It's been drawn back, and I don't think it's coming back. So the authentic self has to come, right? It's a really interesting, I think, adjustment that we're seeing. And Eveliene, I'd love to hear Tyndall a little about the culture that you're driving there, and what does it mean to your organisation?
Yeah, so for us, it's been like an amazing journey so far. It's still a very young company, but we have defined our own DNA. We call it DNA, so you have different forms that all connect to each other, such as inclusion, diversity, but a lot that Lisa mentioned as well comes down to that personal touch. And although you are with a company that's growing and expanding globally, we are really, really close to our people. And we want everyone to be also their unique self and being able to very open, transparent, and it's also what you see back in our processes and how we define our way of work. So we really do our best to keep that drive around diversity, inclusion, and to really pay attention, listen to people, make sure they feel comfortable, bring them on board, as long as we continue to grow. But at the same time, culture eventually also starts from not even from the moment of onboarding, but sometimes already when you start interviewing a person and their first experience. So there are a lot of different factors that you really can pay attention to that all form or show part of culture. And at the end of the day, obviously we can have like a great presentation on this is our DNA or this is our culture, how we define it or have written it down. But at the end of the day, it's also how your people experience it and how you are able to learn and to listen to that and to adapt. So we really do our best to drive and to work together as a team, as a tribe. And to make everyone feel important and heard.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I love that idea of the active listening piece, and how I think that has changed the way we operate as well, is we've got much faster feedback loops for information. And not only do we have faster feedback loops, but we've got the ability to see what that information is actually telling us and see trends over time, cut down by cohorts, and really start getting into the detail of how are people feeling, how are they interacting with the business, are they aligning with the values, are they happy here? And I think those insights really help us to understand how to be quite agile and adapt to certain scenarios as things change. We might just swap your microphone out. Thank you very much. And so, one of the things I'd love to know is, we talked a little bit about, what culture means to the organisation. Lisa, I might ask you this one, is there's been a huge amount of challenges over the past 2 years in maintaining culture, global footprints. We talked about remote onboarding. I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing about the word of the skill shortage that's out there. All of these things that seems to be in a massive trends that have hit us all at a very rapid pace. And that's incredibly challenging. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced at Love Bonito in terms of maintaining culture through this period?
Yeah, look, it is a challenge. I think anyone who says that it's not is probably missing what culture's all about, because the last 2 years have been something no one expected. So it really has changed the way of work. And I guess at Love Bonito, we were a little bit lucky here because we already were starting on that hybrid working model journey. So we already had remote workers. We're already looking at how we engage them and keep them as part of the business. And so we were a little bit ahead of the curve in that respect, but still it was the whole office. It was everyone all at once. And I think, like a lot of businesses, we focused in on some of the key things around engagement and looked at tech tools that we could use, things that will reach out for us, that will contact our people, that will ask questions and give them an open forum. And that was kind of the first step. But when we look at that now in retrospect and we start to assess what we're doing, and a big part of what we do at Love Bonito is constantly iterating. So we're always testing our models and testing what we're doing, not just on the fashion side, but actually on the business itself and how we support our people. And looking at that, it's become really obvious over the last couple of years that with the big shift in people's values and their relationship to work, and that's been escalated and driven really quickly by the pandemic, is that our people truly are value-based. We're not employing for a lifetime anymore. That's been slowly dying out over the last 5 to 10 years. So with that big shift, that means the way we do things, the way we use tech to engage our people, has to iterate more quickly, and it also has to personalise. I think many businesses, and us included in the beginning, we grab something customised off the shelf to try and help our people reach out and be supportive. And now we're kind of pulling back a bit and going, okay, so we've got this now, but how can we personalise it? How can we make it more accessible? How can we now utilise the dropping of borders and some more face-to-face to back up our tech? Because I think in this engagement culture piece, as much as tech is incredibly useful and a great tool, we still need to have some hands-on human contact. And so we need to reassess ourselves now and say, now that we can do that, we've got no excuse, how do we build it into that model? Yep. And that's what we're in the process of doing now.
It's an interesting piece. There's no one size fits all, I think, here. And I think that comes down to what you were talking about, Eveliene, with the DNA of each organisation. It's unique. A lot of the time it comes from the top. And I think it's quite interesting what you were talking about, Lisa, in terms of this customer. It's almost a customer journey. We heard about customer journeys in e-commerce for many, many years. Now we're talking about the journey of the employee. How does that feel throughout the organisation from the time the contract letter is sent to the time of retire? And I think more and more people now are not just stopping at that idea of the onboarding process being about the engagement, or just the employee life cycle surveys or pulse checks that we're doing being engagement, but really trying to architect an entire journey and experience almost for these employees to keep them engaged.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And it is interesting you should mention that employee life cycle, because anyone here who's been in people or HR or whatever topic title that you gave it would know about employee life cycle. It's something we've always kind of lived and breathed to try and make it right. But it's interesting, that employee life cycle is now changing with that values piece, which means it doesn't start with onboarding and end with exit anymore. And for us at Love Bonito, what we're doing is looking at our employer branding to start well before onboarding. You know, we want to reach out, we want to give people a feel for what our culture is and why they might want to be with us. You know, what's different about our business that might make someone want to enjoy part of their career journey. And we're recognising that it's most likely only going to be part of the career journey, because people are staying in jobs for average of 2 to 5 years. So, yeah, our expectations have to match that, our offering has to match that. Great if they stay longer, but, you know, things change right now and they change quickly. And so at the other end, that exit point is no longer our finalisation point. We're now developing an LB alumni. So we want to actively reach out to people who have been with us and they've left and they've gone on to different things that suit their career or lifestyle, and make sure they're recognised too. Make sure they've still got a touch point back to the business and they're still part of the overall Love Bonito family.
I love that idea of the alumni. I know that actually one of our investors, Seek, has a very strong alumni. I know several people who have worked with Seek for many years and left, but that alumni keeps them all connected, and it's a really special part of their careers, their experience, where a lot of them actually learnt a lot of skills and came up through their career paths. So I love that idea of alum, and I'm sure there's a boomerang effect that it causes as well in terms of sometimes being able to bring people back into the fold after they've gone off and done something else in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're scaling very quickly as that happens. You know, opportunities open up for people in other countries that maybe they couldn't take today, but in 2 years they can. And it really just opens up that whole world of possibilities.
Yeah, amazing. And Eveliene, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on how you're seeing at Tyndall the digitisation of some of the processes. We've talked a little bit about onboarding and the employee experience and their life cycle. What are some of the ways you're going around streamlining and digitising this in your organisation?
Yeah, so I think we are really at a point now, a turning point, where you have a lot of tools coming up the market and to choose from and select. So what we've done, and what you've seen regular within other businesses as well, is to really first focus on analyzing your landscape, to understand what are really the gaps that we're seeing, and what are top priorities that we need to focus on, and what actually fits our long and short-term business trajectory. So for us, we've went ahead with a very good HRIS support system, but that doesn't mean that there's going to be one fits all, as you've mentioned in the beginning. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you have done your analysis, I think there are a couple of really good things that you can think of when you're doing your analysis in the beginning, prior to selecting a very good support tool, whether that's an HRIS or an HRIM. Try to include people, your peers, department heads, because that's going to definitely help also to get that adaptation if you're working on change management in an organization, or a restructuring, or optimization of your operations. Once you include your teams or department heads from the beginning, the adaptation later will be very fast, or more likely to be fast. You can work around with a lot of triggers in between to get people excited through emails. But down the line, we all know, there are a lot of tools out to choose from. So it's very important to understand first your own business landscape. Where are we now? What is our short, long-term projection? What do we need? In order to find a tool that really fits best to support your operations and your people management processes. From our end, it's been a very, very interesting journey. But down the line, if you're looking at traditional support tools that are in the market, and they will continue to arise, to develop, and to increase the capabilities that they're offering, and I definitely foresee that in the upcoming years. So that's going to be even more a challenge for us to be very selective in what type of tool you want to go for. But online, it has to stay a support tool that's going to help you with business operations and processes. And not, it should never become a tool that will take over the human touch of how we deal with our people as part of people management. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. Support tools are great and very efficient in the way that we can automate our flows, that we can focus on different processes and way of productivity. But down the line, we never want to keep those tools to bring those off your like your human touch with people. So for us, it helps a lot. We've been growing and expanding in a lot of countries globally in just 1 year time. So when I've joined, I received, for example, an Excel sheet to onboard myself, and that was obviously very traditional. So there are a lot of different ways from onboarding to offboarding your employee life cycles to make it more efficient and supportive for your teams, for yourself, for your own departments, which I think obviously are definitely the core. And what type of tool you're selecting is really depending and looking into your own organization landscape and the core needs.
Yeah, amazing. And I think the interesting part here is that there's the design of process, and that comes from the organisation, and then you need a system that's going to support you and help you to roll that out and standardise that process as well. And to your point, there's a litany of tools that are available in the market for all shapes and sizes, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And I love that idea of before you start taking things off the shelf and trying to plug them in, is really trying to understand what is the end goal of the journey. What are the outcomes that you're really wanting to try and achieve? Have you got the right processes in place? Is the business aligned with the outcomes that you want to achieve with these tools as well? And thinking about that before you start to dive in. And I'm interested to hear from both of you, and maybe Lisa, you can give us a little bit of a sense of, in terms of the technology that you've adopted over the past 2 to 3 years with everything that's changing. What have been some of the focal points for you in terms of the tech tooling, and as a secondary, what's been the impact when you've adopted them?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, and it's a big one as well, because we've adopted some things, we're looking at others, we're looking at adjusting what we've already adopted, and I think that's an important point, is that adjust. Just because you've put a tool in place doesn't mean it's going to be perfect for the next 10 years. And a lot of people forget that. They buy that off-the-shelf big package, and they might only be using half of it in the first year. Then the second year, it's dropping down to about 25%. And so suddenly you're only looking at 1 or 2 metrics, and really the effectiveness of those moving forward is very, very low. You're probably judging yourself against the wrong metrics, which isn't going to help anyone in the business. So in terms of those tools, for us, it's that continual retesting. But also, we've sort of stepped back a little bit, and rather going from that big package of everything, to bring that in, we're a scaling business, so look at your business landscape. We already have a lot of pressure points in the business because we're scaling. We're going cross-border, as Tyndall is. And so that gives you a lot of different things you have to focus on. We're not a mature business who's sustaining. So we're not looking just to improve what we have. There's a whole heap of other things happening. So to adapt or pull in one big system and just plonk it into the business isn't going to work for us. It's going to be too much too soon, and things just won't get used, or they'll get used ineffectively. So for us, we have targeted smaller tools, and that way we can very deliberately use them, we can judge them, we can rate them, we can poke them, prod them, change them, and make sure they're working for our people. Which means that when we bring those smaller tools in, and they're things like very targeted coaching apps that our teams can work with, because we know our teams are under high pressure. We know they're not just doing standard BAU work, they're doing things that mean the business will change every 6 months. So we need to provide some external mentoring and support for them. They don't have to feel like they have to bring it up in a work meeting all the time. They can take it offline. So very targeted tech tool. It's all done by an app on their phone. Their coach rings them, very easy. So very self-driven, which I think is important for our stage of the business. Our people want that control, they're very value-based. Then we look at doing the really simple tech things, which people tend to forget. And that's, for instance, our CEO, Dion, has an open meeting Fridays, which means in the mid-afternoon, she has a couple of hours in her calendar that's open. Now, we all share our calendars. I know some people hate this, but at the end of the day, we might as well be transparent because everyone can find out anyway. So, I think we've all gotten to that point now where if it's transparent, it's easy, we can support each other, and we can book things in really easily without all the back and forth. So Dion does this, so people anywhere in the business can reach out for a chat. So very low-tech way of doing it, still tech-enabled, but it allows our people to have a voice directly with the CEO. Then we have the higher tech, we have the anonymous questions, we have the ask us anything. But these are all very specific, fairly small tools, but they work for our stage of the business. The bigger tools we're looking at, and we're very much looking at staging them. Our ESG tools, our social engagement tools, they're still very much store level or group level, but they will grow over time. So I think it's look at your stage of the business, most importantly, understand your people. And if you don't know now, then you need to start those surveys and questions, those engagement activities to ask the question. And then you're going to know what you actually need for your stage of the business.
Yeah, I love the agile HR tech stack. It's kind of, it's suitable for the way that things are right now at the rate of change. Things continue to change for us. Having that ability to swap in and out as your needs adjust. And companies like Tyndall and also Love Bonito and somewhat similarly Highbob and any very rapidly growing company, I always like to equate it as trying to speed climb Everest. It's also almost mission impossible, right? Like you're moving at such a speed to try and accomplish such a huge challenge. That ability to have that agile swap in and out as you need it is a great way of thinking about the fundamentals of your tech stack.
Absolutely, and it's funny you mentioned the word agile because to be a little bit different for a P&C team, we've literally just brought an agile pillar into our business. So, you traditionally have your L&D, you have your people experience, you have your HR BPs, but we've just brought in a whole agile pillar and are setting it up now for the very reason that we want our whole business to be agile. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to become an agile tech company, but it means agile mindset and targeted pilots of Scrum will support our business as we scale cross-border. So that's now part of our people package as well.
I love that, and actually the previous CPO I worked with at my last role as CRO had a very similar mindset and had agile across the entire organisation. It was a very big part of how we thought and operated, and it was brilliant. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And Eveliene, what about you and Tyndall? You're obviously expanding. You've got some huge challenges. You're a fast-growing business in a really exciting space.
Yep.
What are some of the kind of challenges you're trying to solve with technology at the moment, and what's been the focus over the past 2 years?
So to be really frank, so we have expanded. So we started with roughly 20 people a year ago, and we are now close to 80. So we're trying to still expand, not too aggressive, but more stable in obviously true phases as well, different regions globally. For us, the challenge was mostly around like how do we connect our people throughout in a very fast-paced environment and grow different regions, different department teams. And how do we make sure that everyone still feels part of the team, where you have countries you might have only one employee sit in, you have other countries where you have like larger teams sit in. So we've been really looking at like what is the process that we need to put in place, like I've mentioned just before, like on a short-term and a long-term projection. And how can we, and I think that's very important to keep in mind as well, like generally with processes and tools, like never overdo things too fast. Like either you implement it too fast, and then on the later end you might need to change it again or restructure it. So we really took our time while we've been very selective in where do we start. So that means that right now we don't have everything in place yet, but our core basis, our core foundation is there. Which is needed to continue to grow. So we've really planned on phases, like for example, upcoming year, we're going to focus more on how is our L&D structure and landscape looking like. Last year, end of 2021, this year, we've really focused on what are core components around all the employee life cycles, what are our benefits definitions for people look like. And for us, it's always been very important to stay as simple as possible in a way that people understand, they like to be part of it and also have part of a voice in what's going to happen. So I think that's very important as part of transparency as well. But also to really focus, like our core focus is really to try and be as equal as possible to everyone. On one end, to how we set our processes or tools in place and be very engaged with our people, but also down to benefits, despite where someone is being located or working from. So we faced a very different challenges, but I think that core foundation is so important to think through, because once you have that in place, you're going to be able to make changes where needed, but to continue to grow and build up more layers throughout countries and regions where you see the needs. So that's like in a very brief summary on where we've landed. But we've made big steps already. Like we've defined our complete benefits, employee benefits globally, meaning APAC, Europe, US, and we're focusing on Latin America as well. In less than 1 year, we've been focusing on defining our career levels and that whole structure around to be ready before our L&D comes in place next year. Obviously, we've engaged with Bob for our HRES, so we're getting there.
Yeah, amazing. I love the investment in benefits as well. Obviously, a big sign of a company that's looking to invest in their people, but also maybe some of the signs of a skill short market where we're like trying to attract the right people as well. I think it's always a bit of duality there. Some of the stuff I loved you talking about was really investing in the foundations of collaboration and communication. I think, from my own experience being onboarded by a big global company in Australia, no face-to-face, I think I met my boss for 30 minutes in the first 2 weeks and everything else was done online and through onboarding processes, but yet still felt unbelievably connected to the organisation and the people, and those little moments, I think, as we try and expand and go global and have those systems that can support are some of the fundamentals in establishing that culture piece and that feeling of being attached to the organisation early on. And now I know we've only got a few minutes left. I think I wanted to see if there were any questions from the audience. Anyone out there have anything they want to ask either Lisa or Eveliene? I've got one last question. Good. Looking forward as we think about, the next, let's call it, 5 years, what are some of the most exciting things that are coming up in terms of technology and how you think it's going to help you guys to do your jobs moving forward? What are some of the things you're excited to see start to emerge?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, and it might be a bit of a moonshot still at the moment, but I would love to see AI for good. And what I mean about that is that a lot of people are scared of AI right now, all these jobs it's going to take away, how things are going to change. But I think we can switch this around a fair bit, particularly in the people space. And if we can get to that level of AI integration with our HR stack, that it can give us that analytical information. It can test us, it can throw some questions up. Have you seen, have you done, have you thought? I think those kind of things are what then allow our people to take that and run with it and develop the organisation further. Yeah, and they're the kind of things that quite often right now, and we all work in this space, we know how busy we get. HR is one of those spaces where you might have gaps in your calendar, but something happens and it fills up. It wasn't on the agenda, but it's HR and it has to be dealt with, right? So we know this happens to us, and we know we don't have the time we want for that deep dive, personal analysis of all the information that comes our way. So I think when AI gets to that point that we can program what we want into it easily without having to be a tech developer or any other specialist, then it's really going to support our decisions and make them much easier and really embrace and encourage our people as well.
Yeah, amazing. Very interested to see where that goes as well. I love the idea of good AI. Eveliene, how about you? What are the trends you're really looking forward to?
Well, I'm quite excited to see what I've recently noticed. There's so much going on, specifically on software development, particularly in India. And there are quite some changes happening actually on the L&D side. So if you're thinking ahead on traditional way of L&D, There's quite some interesting tools and development happening at the moment where you have a combination between reward recognition and L&D at the same time. So I think that is definitely something that is continuing to develop to an extent that we'll see where we're going to land. So it's quite interesting in a way. But then again, it will definitely come down to what fits best to the organization. There's so many options to choose from. So let's see. I think we're in a very interesting moment at this point of time, where we're really trying to reshape our future way of work. And how we're going to make use from the right tools that support us in our day-to-day operations and support the business. So it's yes, I'm definitely looking forward to how that's further developing.
Great insights. Personally, I'm looking forward to a true global payroll. When that comes out, I'll be a happy man.
Big wish.
Yeah, big wish. Lisa, Eveliene, thank you so much for your time. It's been great chatting with you. Really interesting to hear your journeys and what you've been up to recently. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.